Welcome! This video is very important. It will show you how one man, George Soros, uses his incredible wealth to influence the world and shape it in a way he sees fit. From Europe to the United States, from lawyers to presidents, George Soros will fund the campaign of anyone who will further his agenda. But what is his agenda? Well, George Soros has been quoted saying, "The main obstacle to a stable and just world order is the United States." So, is he trying to destroy America? Is he trying to destroy the West? Western values? Well, let's get into it. When George Soros is criticized, his powerful friends in the media quickly jump out in his defense and claim bigotry, anti-Semitism. But is it true? Is it every time that you criticize George Soros, you're being anti-Semitic? I mean, George Soros hates Israel. He funds the BDS movement, boycott, divest, sanction Israel. So that argument doesn't hold water. George Soros is a radical billionaire who's been subverting our democracy for far too long. The media doesn't like criticizing Soros because they get a lot of money from him. Even though I'm going to show you some clips from Tucker criticizing Soros, that's not commonplace. For example, let me show you what happened when Newt Gingrich mentioned George Soros in a Fox News interview.
Right? Speaker Gingrich, I know you have a final thought for us.
Yeah, look, the number one problem in almost all these cities is George Soros elected left-wing, anti-police, pro-criminal district attorneys who refuse to keep people locked up. Just yesterday, they put somebody back on the street who's wanted for 2 different murders in New York City. You cannot solve this problem, and both Harris and Biden have talked very proudly about what they call progressive district attorneys. Progressive district attorneys are anti-police, pro-criminal, and overwhelmingly elected with George Soros' money, and they're a major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
I'm not sure we need to bring George Soros into this. I was going to say you get the last word, Speaker.
He paid for it. I mean, why can't we discuss the fact that millions of dollars he spent?
I agree with Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
Okay. So it's verboten.
All right, we're going to. Okay, we're going to move on.
That was awkward, and we ain't moving on. Let's go through these district attorneys who were bought and paid for by George Soros. I think it's appropriate for me to start with Kim Gardner, district attorney in St. Louis. I want to start with her because before I started my research for this video, she was the only district attorney on the list whom I had disdain for. You guys remember the St. Louis gun-toting couple? The McCloskeys? The ones who were defending themselves and their property from the BLM and Antifa thug mob that broke into their community and broke the gate? You remember those guys who were later charged by the wonderful Kim Gardner? Yeah, that's her, Kim Gardner. She's a disgusting woman. For example, the private investigator she hired was just charged with perjury and with tampering with evidence. Oh, but that's the private investigator. That's not Kim Gardner. Well, it appears that Kim Gardner was tampering with evidence as well. You guys remember when she tried reassembling Mrs. McCloskey's gun in a way that she could further charge her with a felony? Yeah, let me refresh your memory.
5 on your side has learned the gun Patricia McCloskey pointed at protesters did not work when police seized it, until someone in the prosecutor's office apparently told the crime lab to fix the gun before the charges were filed. Our Casey Nolan sorts out the latest twists in the case.
According to their attorney, one of the guns now seen around the world couldn't fire a shot when the McCloskeys confronted protesters outside their home. Patricia's pistol was a prop the couple had used in court, said their attorney when he turned it over to police. And according to a document from the investigation obtained by 5 on your side, the pistol did not work when investigators first examined it. When the crime lab staff took the gun apart, according to this document, the gun was then reassembled correctly and it did work. Charging documents allege the gun was, quote, readily capable of lethal use.
Dirty, dirty, dirty. And now, a judge has dismissed her and her entire staff from prosecuting this case because the judge believes that the McCloskeys would not receive a fair trial. Yes, Kim Gardner. Disgusting. But what does this have to do with George Soros? Well, Kim Gardner wouldn't be in the position she is without George Soros or George Soros' money. Soros was the main source of contribution for Kim Gardner's campaign when she first took over in 2006 and in every election since. Since 2006, when Gardner got into office, crime has gone up 9%, making St. Louis the most violent crime city in America, passing Detroit per 100,000 residents. Good job. In the past 2 election cycles, Soros has given Kim Gardner over $300,000, which is a lot of money for a district attorney's race in St. Louis. But it's nothing compared to what he gave Larry Krasner, district attorney in Philadelphia. A Soros-funded super PAC provided Krasner with $1.7 million for his campaign, a ridiculous, preposterous, unheard of amount for a DA race. Consequently, Krasner won, and Philadelphia paid dearly. Before taking office, Krasner made his name suing cops and protecting Black Lives Matter. Now, he's the main cop in town. Obviously, crime has risen 37%. 37%. Krasner is dismissing an unprecedented amount of cases, and he's putting criminals back on the streets when they should be locked up. Here's Exhibit A.
Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner has made it clear that his top priority is protecting the city's criminals rather than its law-abiding citizens. That's bad enough in the abstract, but it's easy to forget that this policy has real victims. It has destroyed the lives of real people. Michael White stabbed Sean Skellinger to death, allegedly after gloating online that he was about to, quote, cut someone. Despite that, and there's no dispute about it, he did it, Krasner would not even charge White with homicide. The case was weakened by that so badly that White in the end wound up with just probation. Now, last week, Philadelphia's Chestnut Hill College invited both Krasner and White to its, quote, Transforming Justice Conference. White was used as an example, a standout example of criminal justice reform. I'm sorry about this, and I can't imagine what it must be like for you to see the man who murdered your son held up as a hero. What is it like?
Outrageous. That's the word that comes to mind. It is really outrageous. They're parading this person around as an example of criminal justice reform. It is appalling to me that they would do such a thing.
Another example. On May 5th, a man called Jawan Peterson robbed and shot a man called Mike Pwang. Shot him in the head. The man was taken to the hospital where he died, but was later resuscitated. Krasner refused to charge Peterson with attempted murder. Instead, he charged him with aggravated assault and robbery, 3.5 years in jail, and then probation. Back on the streets. Nice. Nice. Thanks, George Soros. In Chicago, we have District Attorney Kimberly Fox. Fox for short. Fox received $600,000 in her first election in 2016, but in 2020, things were heating up. Why? Well, she was supporting them to fund the police movement, so she needed more money. So what did she do? She got $2 million from George Soros. Unprecedented. $2 million. You might remember Kimberly Fox from the whole Jussie Smollett incident when he faked his own hate crime, and then she dropped all 16 counts against him for no reason whatsoever. Later, in an unprecedented event, over 30 police chiefs of the area got together for a news conference saying they had lost complete confidence in District Attorney Kimberly Fox. When people said, oh, this is about this Smollett case, the police chiefs responded quickly and said, no, it is not. It's about many things that Fox has been doing incorrectly, mainly not charging people who batter police officers. Take a listen.
I'm referring to the difficulty that State's Attorney Fox has imposed on our assistants to get us felony charges on dangerous criminals. And many times, the hoops that we have to go through to try to get a felony charge, and then most of the time, they're either not approved or the charges are dismissed in court without an officer's opinion, without notifying the police agency or the police officer themselves. So basically, in essence, she's putting criminals back on the street, either during the process or not charging them at all, and allowing them to go back on the street and commit their crimes again.
How does that affect officer safety?
Because they're back on the street when maybe they shouldn't be. They should be locked up pending trial.
This didn't start with Jussie Smollett. This started when we wanted to try and make sure that when officers received the battery and the performance of their duties, that the felony charges would be placed. And we continually had problems getting those charges approved. And they were continuously denied, even though that's what the law requires.
Fox, like Krasner, is also dropping felony charges left and right. This, in combination with the fact that she refuses to charge people who attack cops, creates the chaos that George Soros so desires. That's why he funds these people, to create chaos, to make the regular people, the peasants, how he likes to think, feel unsafe. And when the peasants feel unsafe, they will ask Big Daddy government to get bigger, more government, more control. Maybe a global government? I'm sure he will love that. And now, let's move on to California, where, unsurprisingly, there are at least 3 DAs who are backed by none other than Mr. George Soros. Let's start with Diana Beckton in Contra County, California. She has said that looters should not be charged with looting if their looting was motivated by a state of emergency, aka the Rona or aka systematic racism. Police departments freaked out. The mayor of Antioch couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it either. And what's with all these people on the far left thinking that looters and people that steal do it because they need to? You sound like AOC, who, by the way, was also partially funded by George Soros. But we'll get to her later. This is a common thing among the George Soros disciples. They paint the perpetrators, the violent people who steal, rob, and hit you, as the actual victims. Good move. Diane Beckton also decided to charge a couple who painted over a Black Lives Matter mural with a hate crime, even though the motivation was not hate at all. It was just that the mural was itself illegal. But anything that has to do with black or with minorities or oppressed people is now a hate crime, according to lefties, Justice Democrats, and super progressives like Diana Beckton. In San Francisco, we have Chesa Boudin, district attorney elected with the money of George Soros. Fun fact about Mr. Chesa Boudin, his parents were radicals who are now in prison for murder. But doesn't matter, does it? We're not going to convict the child for the crimes of his father like Obama did with the drone strikes and killing a 16-year-old. We're not going to do that. What is interesting about Chesa Boudin is that he ran on a policy that eliminated gang enhancements. And as I told you before, these gang enhancements add years to the prison sentences of gang members who commit heinous crimes in public. Why would you want to get rid of that? Oh, I know. You want chaos and violence, don't you? Hashtag Soros for life, baby. The list goes on. I could be here all day. We have James Stewart in Louisiana, Kim Oggs in Texas, Scott Cullum in Mississippi, Aras Ayala in Orlando. There's more. I want to focus on one last one. George Gascon, the new district attorney in LA. Gascon received $2 million from George Soros, who was by far his biggest donor. Once elected, Gascon set out a series of criminal justice changes, or reforms if you will. For example, he ended cash bail, which is an awful idea, and it went so bad in New York that Governor Cuomo, who's mentally deficient, had to step in and help Mayor de Blasio, who's even worse, to amend the rule. It doesn't work. Gascon also wants to ban the death penalty and, again, gang enhancements or enhancements for anyone who commits a crime with a firearm. Gascon wants to make sure that criminals can be back on the streets ASAP. What a good guy. Gascon also wants to put an end to prosecuting what he calls crimes of poverty. Take a listen.
We criminalize behavior largely associated with poverty. Loitering, drinking in public, public intoxication, possession of drugs and paraphernalia, and more.
Isn't that funny? Anybody with half a brain will tell you that these policies will negatively impact poor communities the most. Crime is more prevalent on poor communities. When you start prosecuting it, there's more of it, not less of it. But Gascon knows this. You know why he knows this? Because he used to be the DA of San Francisco, and with these same policies, he ran the city to the ground. Take a look.
Here's what George Gascon's legacy looked like for normal people, in this case for business owners in San Francisco.
The Walgreens at Van Ness and Eddy in San Francisco will close its doors for good November 11th. Customers say the store is known for being a notoriously easy place to shoplift.
I've heard the Walgreens is real easy to peel from.
Why is that?
Because they don't chase you.
And neighbors agree shoplifting has been an ongoing problem at this location and may be a major factor in why it will soon be closed. Customers say the shelves are bare, the company not even bothering to restock.
This store's completely wiped out. I've watched these guys come in and just grab boxes full of honey buns and walk out, and poor guys inside, they can't do anything about it.
Completely wiped out. So bam, no more drugstore. You can't walk to go buy things. The fabric starts to unravel. That's what George Soros is funding. That's the point of funding it. They can't do anything about it, you heard the business owner say. He's talking about the police. So what good is calling the police when they won't even take a report when they arrive? Under George Gascon's tenure in San Francisco, arrests flatlined, and you can see why. There was no point in arresting people. On Gascon's orders, prosecutors in San Francisco filed criminal charges in only about 50% of felony cases over 8 years, from 2011 to 2019. 50% of felony cases. In misdemeanor cases, it dropped to 40%. So with nothing to do, prosecutors left Gascon's office in huge numbers. In his final term, a total of 61 San Francisco prosecutors out of 140 left their posts. Almost half resigned.
The fabric unravels. And that's exactly what George Soros wants, and that's exactly why he's funding these people. By July of this year, George Soros had spent $52 million on the US election cycle. And I'm not talking about the presidential race, even though he was one of the top donors to Joe Biden, and he was the top billionaire donor to Hillary Clinton. Soros foundations have also pledged over $220 million to Black Lives Matter to combat racial inequity in the United States. They also fund the National Lawyers League, which has been described as the legal arm of Antifa. They represent them in court and get them out of jail back into the streets all the time. Awesome. Another place where Soros put his tentacles is Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur is the creator of the Young Turks, a left-wing YouTube news show. Cenk Uygur is also the creator of the Justice Democrats, the founder. The Justice Democrats are the political party association to which AOC, the Squad, and all the progressive congressmen belong to. When Cenk asked AOC to run as a Justice Democrat, Soros Digital Media had promised free coverage equating about $300 million. So, when AOC and the Squad and all the progressives tell you their movement is the grassroots movement, it's the will of the people, don't believe them. It's that Soros money. Soros isn't only influencing America though, his tentacles reach worldwide. We're not going to get into the details of all of his tentacles because, let's be real, I'll get about 50 to 100 views and this video has gone long enough. But I want to mention the following. The European Court of Human Rights holds an incredible amount of power and authority over the European Union. A recent study has shown that from 2009 to 2019, 22 of the 100 sitting judges were paid for and funded by George Soros. His tentacles are ever-reaching. One of the best parts of the United States is that we have a federalist system. So, if George Soros were to ever buy the president of the United States, the states, cities, and localities still could hold certain rights. But now, Soros is putting the localities in his pocket, slowly but surely tearing away at this fabric of our society. How can we solve this? Do we need to take money out of politics in order to prevent billionaires like George Soros from influencing and shaping the world how they see fit? Comment your opinion down below. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe. See you next time.